Over a measly cassava patch, a billionaire father-in-law was ready to murder his own grandson. A stinging slap to the face, a field turned to ash, and a cold-blooded threat. Either you vanish, or you start picking out a coffin for this kid. But the killer never saw this coming. The son who tossed away his throne isn't begging for mercy. It's a seismic showdown in the heart of the great wilderness. Will James choose his own blood, or will he personally throw his powerful father behind bars to get justice for his family? The horrifying truth about the Black Ledger and a decade of hidden crimes is finally coming to light. Who will pay the price, and can Diep keep a roof over her child's head when she's staring down the barrel of $1 billion empire? Don't turn away. The truth is more terrifying than you can imagine. Smash that like button if you stand for justice. Subscribe and hit the bell to back James and Diep in this life or death struggle. The journey of revenge and redemption starts right now. After the William Group case wrapped up, James was officially a man with nothing. His accounts were frozen for the investigation, and he had walked away from his inheritance. James returned to the valley with literally just the clothes on his back. In the beginning, James didn't know the first thing about handling a hoe. His hands, once used only for signing million-dollar contracts, were now blistered and bleeding from clearing out the charred cassava stalks left behind after his father's herbicide attack. Watching him, Diep felt a pang of heartache. "James, maybe you should take a break," she said. "Let me do it. You don't have to push yourself like this." James just smiled, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Diep, I used to build houses with other people's money. Now I want to build a future for you and Ly with my own 2 hands on this land. This pain, it feels real. It reminds me that I'm actually alive. Instead of just selling cassava cakes at the local market, James had an idea to take his wife's specialty to the next level. With business management in his DNA, he started restructuring the plantation. He ditched the chemical fertilizers. Along with Fat, his best friend, who had also moved to the valley for some soul-searching, James designed an automated irrigation system using bamboo and water power from the stream behind the house. Diep kept her secret recipe for rich coconut cream, but James suggested adding crushed cashews and a hint of forest honey. When baked, the crust turned a perfect golden brown, and the scent carried all the way to the top of the hill. Every bag of cakes was tied with a red thread and included a small, smooth river stone as a symbol of resilience. Word spread fast. Delivery trucks headed into the highlands started pulling over at their porch. People didn't just come for the taste. They came to see the billionaire heir who dug for cassava with their own eyes. But life is never a bed of roses. One night in August, the sky opened up. The roar from the mountains signaled one thing: a flash flood was coming. The irrigation system was swept away. Half of the young cassava patch, which had just started taking root, was buried under mud and debris. Diep stood on the floor of their wooden house, clutching Ly as she watched the crimson floodwaters roar past their porch. Her heart sank. James stood out in the pouring rain, caked in mud from head to toe, desperately trying to build a makeshift levee to keep the water out of the chicken coop. When he finally came inside, shivering uncontrollably from the cold, Diep burst into tears. "Maybe we were wrong, James. Maybe we don't belong here. Nature is just too cruel. James pulled her close, his voice low and steady even over the roar of the rain. Diep, remember that river stone? It only becomes smooth because it's been tossed around by the current for years. We're the same way. We lost the crop, but we still have the land. We still have our strength. And most importantly, we have each other. The sun will come up tomorrow. The flood didn't break them. Instead, it became a turning point. Seeing James's grit, the local villagers who had been wary of the city people began to open up. They banded together to help Diep's family clear the wreckage. James realized then that if they wanted to last, they couldn't do it alone. Using the small amount of savings they had from the cake sales, he founded the Valley Cassava Cooperative. He taught the locals how to package products and how to take photos to sell them on social media. Diep became the head chef, teaching the village women how to process cassava into various goods to increase their value. What started as a single family being bullied by power turned into an entire valley becoming a hub for organic produce. Their days now started at 5 Central a.m., but it was the busy hum of prosperity. A year after Mr. William was sent to prison, James decided to take Diep and Ly to visit him. Behind the glass partition, William looked 10 years older. The fierce glare he once held had faded into a dull, lonely hollow. When he saw little Ly press her tiny hand against the glass, he wept. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the receiver. "I built skyscrapers that reached the clouds, but I couldn't build a single path back home for myself." James looked at his father, the hatred finally gone. "Just focus on your rehabilitation, Dad. There's always a place for you at our farm when you get out. There are no stock tickers there, just the smell of the earth and the sound of the birds." 5 years passed. Diep and James's wooden house had been renovated. It was spacious now, but still simple. Ly was starting school, acting as the mini brand ambassador for the cooperative, always wearing the stone pendant James had made for her on that first day. One evening, under a crimson sunset, James and Diep sat together beneath a massive ancient tree at the top of the hill. Below them, the green fields of cassava rustled in the wind like ocean waves. James took Diep's hand, less scarred now, but stronger. "You know, Diep, I used to think happiness meant having enough money to protect you, but now I get it. Happiness is facing the storm with you without being afraid." Diep leaned her head on his shoulder and teased, "About today's batch of cakes. You forgot the honey, didn't you?" James laughed loudly. "No, I didn't. Your lips are sweet enough as it is." Their laughter drifted into the air, mingling with the peaceful smoke from the kitchen fires. The storm had truly passed, leaving behind a love forged in fire and mud, as resilient and beautiful as the smooth stones in the valley stream. The rainy season in the valley lasted longer than usual that year. Little Ly was almost 6. In this remote highland region, a birthday cake was something luxury and foreign. For the local kids in the village, a birthday usually meant nothing more than a roasted cassava root or a bowl of hot ginger soup made by their mothers. As James watched his daughter draw a picture of a cake with candles and the damp earth, his heart ached. He turned to Diep. "Listen, we have premium cassava flour, wild honey, and fresh farm eggs. Why don't we try to make Ly a real birthday cake, using only what the valley gives us? Diep hesitated. But I only know traditional recipes. Western cakes. They need ovens, mixers, and a lot of technical skill. James smiled, his eyes lighting up with the same fire he used to have when running massive corporate projects. We'll make a valley-style cake. I'll build an oven out of clay and bricks, and you're already a flavor wizard. They failed 3 times that day in their small, fire-lit kitchen. The first time, the cake didn't rise and was hard as a rock. The second time, the frosting made from coconut cream and egg whites separated and collapsed. But on the 4th try, as the scent of toasted cassava flour and ripening honey filled the air, a golden cake emerged soft and light as a cloud. They decorated it with bright red wild berries. On the night of the birthday, watching Ly close her eyes to make a wish by the flickering candlelight, and seeing the village children huddling around, staring wide-eyed at every slice, James took Diep's hand. We're opening a bakery, Diep, not just for Ly, but for everyone who wants a taste of a new beginning. The journey to open the shop was harder than they imagined. Without his massive fortune, James had to use his own 2 hands to renovate an old warehouse near the main road leading into the valley. Day after day, people saw the former heir carrying timber on his shoulders and handcrafting every shelf and table. Meanwhile, Diep was obsessed with perfecting the recipe. She wanted a cake that the poor could afford, but with a quality that would make wealthy city folks trek all the way to the valley to find it. The base, 70% hand-filtered cassava flour for a light, chewy texture. The sweetener, pure palm sugar and wild banana nectar. The frosting, thick coconut cream, hand-whisked with a pinch of sea salt, rich but never heavy. Whenever he felt exhausted, James would look out at the lush green cassava fields. He thought of his father behind bars. He once wrote to him, "Dad, I'm building another tower. It's only 1 story high, it smells like cassava flour, and it's filled with children's laughter. It's the sturdiest tower I've ever built." The bakery, named Seeds of Happiness, officially opened on a brilliant spring morning as the cherry blossoms bloomed. The sign was carved from driftwood, featuring Diep's elegant handwriting. On opening day, the customers weren't businessmen in black suits. They were mothers with babies strapped to their backs, road workers covered in mud, and groups of backpackers passing through. At noon, a sleek black luxury car suddenly pulled up in front of the shop. A sophisticated woman stepped out. It was Linda, Mr. Williams' former secretary and the current manager of the remaining family estate. The air suddenly turned to ice. Diep nervously gripped her apron. James stepped forward, calm and composed. "Linda, are you here to collect a debt or to buy a cake?" Linda looked around the small but cozy shop, watching Ly politely offer guests bowls of herbal tea. She sighed and placed a small box on the table. "The chairman asked me to deliver this to you. He said, it's the only grand opening gift he can offer right now." Inside was the watch James had left on the desk the day he walked away, along with a scrap of paper with only 3 words, "The cake is delicious." As it turned out, Mr. William had been sending people to buy the cakes and deliver them to the prison via long-distance buses for weeks. Diep burst into tears. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need grand gestures. It's simply about acknowledging each other's worth. The bakery's fame grew, but fame always brings trouble. A major food conglomerate from the city wanted to buy Diep's recipe for a fortune on the condition that she close her shop and move to the city to be their consultant. Their representatives arrived flashing multi-million-dollar contracts. Mr. James, you're a businessman. You know better than anyone how long it would take to earn this kind of money in a hole like this, one said. James looked at Diep. He saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, not because she was greedy, but because she wanted a better education for Ly in the city. James remained silent for a moment, then led the representative to the back of the shop, where a group of local children were sitting and eating the cake scraps Diep had set aside for them. Do you see this? The city has thousands of bakeries, but here, this is the only place that teaches these kids that life can be sweet. We aren't selling a recipe. We're guarding the hope of this valley. That night, under the moonlight, Diep asked, "Do you regret it?" James pulled her close. "If I wanted money, I wouldn't have come back here. I want a wife who smiles when she's baking, and a daughter who loves the land beneath her feet." Seeds of Happiness became more than a business. James turned it into a community hub. Once a month, the shop hosted a free birthday cake day for every child in the region born that month. James played a clumsy clown, while Diep was the cassava fairy. Their lives settled into a state of true peace. At dawn, James would prep the firewood, Diep would knead the dough, and Ly would water the flowers out front. The once turbid red stream was now crystal clear. The cassava patches that had been buried years ago now blanketed the hillsides in vibrant green, providing an endless supply for the bakery. Years later, when Ly had grown up, she would often tell her friends the story of her parents. It was a story about a man who walked away from a throne for a clay oven, and a woman who used kindness to turn bitterness into honey. The Seeds of Happiness bakery still stands there, nestled against the hillside. Whenever someone asks for the secret to their success, James points to the river stone on the counter. The secret isn't in the flour or the sugar, he says. It's about whether you're brave enough to burn away your ego in the fire to save the flavor of family. As the afternoon sun stretched across the trail, James and Diep walked hand in hand toward the fields. The mountain breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying the scent of fresh bread, wild grass, and the most peaceful life on earth. One evening, as the honey-gold light of dusk settled over the green hills, James decided to close the shop early. He asked Diep to pack a special gift basket, 2 small cakes in their original flavor, and a jar of cassava wine he had personally aged in an earthen cellar for a year. He walked toward the small, wooden shack isolated on the hilltop, the place Fat had chosen for his life as a hermit. After years of grinding through data and malware in the city, seeing James's silhouette from afar, Fat sat on the porch, fiddling with an old tablet, the only weapon he had kept from his former life. He let out a deep laugh, his voice still carrying that rugged edge. "Doesn't the bakery owner have cakes to bake today? Or are you here to ask me to hack into another system?" James set the gift basket down on the rustic wooden table and sat across from his friend. He poured 2 glasses of wine, the heady scent of fermented cassava mingling with the smell of wild grass in the air. No malware, no systems. I'm here today as James, just a farmer who owes you his life. James raised his glass, his eyes growing deep. But if you hadn't broken into those classified files, if you hadn't stepped up to protect Deep when I wasn't there, I'd probably be rotting in some prison cell my father rigged for me. Or worse, I'd have lost my family. Thank you for not giving up on me when I had absolutely nothing. Fat took a sip of the wine, exhaled sharply in satisfaction, and looked toward the distant horizon where the purple mountains were sinking into the dark. James, you've got it wrong. I didn't help you because you're my friend or because I wanted to be a hero. I helped you because out of that whole elite world of lies, you were the only one who dared to be human. You walked away from billions to dig for cassava. That's the kind of madness I admire. Fat set his glass down, his voice dropping an octave. Actually, you're the one who helped me. You showed me that my skills could be used to save people, not just manipulate markets. Watching you and Deep find happiness makes me feel like there's still hope for this world. James pulled a small birthday cake from the basket. It didn't have a name on it, just 2 small symbols, a compass and a river stone. I missed your birthday last month while I was obsessed with the new ovens. This is to make up for it. The compass is because you pointed the way for me, and the stone is because you've always been my rock. Fat looked at the cake, and the rough hands of a man used to hammering keyboards suddenly trembled slightly. At his age, living alone in the deep woods, the sincere care of a close friend was worth more than any corporate bonus he had ever received. Hey, James. Fat suddenly asked, do you ever regret putting your father in prison? James was silent for a long time, the glow of the oil lamp highlighting the lines of experience on his face. I don't regret it, but it does hurt. But thanks to your help, at least he can sleep soundly now, without worrying about the next scheme. I'm waiting for the day he gets out so I can bring him here and make him a cassava cake with my own 2 hands. The 2 men sat together late into the night. They didn't talk about money, nor did they speak of their past filled with blood and tears. They talked about how to bring electricity to the primary school down in the valley, and how to make it easier for the Highland mothers to sell Deep's cakes online. Before leaving, James gripped Fat's hand. There's always a seat saved for you at the bakery, and Nye, she still calls you Superman Fat. Don't stay up on this hilltop forever. The valley needs you. Fat stood there, watching James head back down the slope, his flashlight fading into the distance like a stray star. He smiled, took a bite of the cassava cake and let it melt. The sweetness of the wild honey, the richness of the coconut, and the earthiness of the cassava blended into a flavor that no 5-star restaurant in the city could ever replicate the taste of loyalty. After that encounter, Fat began to appear regularly at the Seeds of Happiness bakery. He was no longer the grumpy hermit. Instead, he became a volunteer IT teacher, giving free lessons to the village children right on James's porch. The combination of Diep's heart, James's will, and Fat's intellect turned the small bakery into the beating heart of the entire region. Their lives were no longer a high-stakes action thriller filled with dark plots. They had become a peaceful diary where every passing day carried the scent of fresh bread and the laughter of people who dared to choose kindness as their North Star. To truly understand the depth of their journey, we must look at the Valley Light Project, a mission where James Diep and Fat did more than just bake. They changed the destiny of the land itself. The winter of their 7th year in the valley arrived earlier than usual. Bitter north winds swept through, bringing a bone-chilling cold that turned the once vibrant cassava leaves brittle, leaving the fields blanketed in frost. Inside the glowing kitchen of the bakery, James sat by the embers, rubbing his calloused hands together. Diep brought out a fresh batch of ginger-infused cassava cakes, a special winter recipe designed to keep the body warm. Ly, now a bright second grader, was busy sketching at a wooden desk that Uncle Fat had recently built for her. "James, I'm worried," Diep said, gazing out the frost-covered window. "This winter is too harsh. The kids at the Highland School will probably have to stay home again because of the frozen trails and the cold." Diep's words struck a chord with James. He looked over at Fat, who was hunched over repairing a mini generator for a neighbor. A grand idea began to take shape. "Fat," James started, "we have the sweets and we have the love. But this valley still lacks one thing to truly rise, light and knowledge." Fat looked up, his eyes sharp under the dim oil lamp. "You thinking of building a school or bringing in the power grid?" James shook his head. "The national grid won't reach us for a long time. But we have the current of the Red Stream and the wind from Coffee Peak. Why don't we create our own Valley Light? Using what we already have." The following morning, despite temperatures dropping below 50 degrees to 10 degrees, the three friends set out. James shouldered the primitive surveying tools. Fat carried his tablet, loaded with technical schematics, and Diep packed a basket full of cassava cakes and ginger tea to sustain them. They climbed Coffee Peak, the highest point in the valley, where the wind blew so relentlessly that even the ancient trees leaned in submission. "Right here," Fat said, pointing to a rocky outcrop. "If we install small wind turbines here, we can light up the entire schoolhouse and your bakery." But the obstacles were immediate. The cost of the equipment was staggering. James didn't want to touch his family's final emergency fund. He wanted this project to belong to the whole community. James came up with his boldest business strategy yet. He and Diep decided to launch a Cassava Without Borders Week. They used Fat's tech skills to live stream the daily reality of their lives. Diep kneading dough, James foraging for wild berries, and the local children huddled in dimly lit classrooms. For the first time, James stood before a camera, not as a high-powered CEO, but as a father and a neighbor with a mission. "Hi everyone, I'm James. Today, I'm not selling you a cake just to fill your stomach. I'm selling you a spark of light. For every cake you buy, 50% of the proceeds will go toward building a wind power station for the children of this valley." Their sincerity triggered a massive wave of support. Orders flooded in from across the country. From luxury apartments in Saigon to busy offices in Hanoi, people were captivated and moved by the story of the billionaire in search of light, the seeds of happiness. Bakery transformed into a massive production line. Everyone in the village, from the elderly to the strongest young men, volunteered to help Diep wrap cakes and transport them to the district post office. The bustling energy was enough to melt the winter chill. But at the height of the campaign, disaster struck. The truck carrying the first batch of wind turbines from the city got stuck due to a landslide on the North Pass. James and Fat had to head out into the night to save the equipment. The forest rain was torrential, and the roads were as slick as grease. The truck carrying the gear was teetering on the edge of a precipice. "James, it's too dangerous. Let me drive. I have more experience with off-roading," Fat yelled over the whistling wind. James pushed his friend back. "No, you need to get back and calibrate the electrical circuits. This is on me." Facing death, as the wheels skidded through the sludge, James thought of Diep and Nye's smiles. He gritted his teeth, using every ounce of strength and the driving skills of his youth to fight the steering wheel. The engine roared, tearing through the black night. Miraculously, the truck cleared the landslide. When James stepped out, covered in mud, he collapsed, gasping for air. Fat ran over and hugged him. They both knew these machines weren't just steel and wire. They were the hopes of hundreds of children. A week later, the first wind turbine was successfully installed on Coffee Peak. Fat pulled 3 consecutive all-nighters to finalize the power transmission to the school. On the night of the inauguration, the entire valley gathered at the schoolyard. Diep had prepared a massive birthday cake, the largest she had ever made, decorated with 100 candles made from wild beeswax. James stood at the control panel, his hands trembling. "Nye, would you like to be the one to press the button?" Little Nee stepped forward, her tiny finger touching the switch. Click. In an instant, a brilliant blue-white light erupted from the schoolhouse on the hill, spreading down to the wooden cabins and finally illuminating the Seeds of Happiness bakery. Cheers echoed through the mountains. The children danced around the electric bulbs, the first they had ever seen. Diep leaned her head on James's shoulder, tears of joy streaming down her face. "You did it, James. You brought the sun to the valley in the middle of the night." Fat stood in the distance, holding a cup of cassava wine and wearing a quiet smile. He knew he had finally found his true home. A few days after the festival, James received a special package. The sender, the administration office of the prison where Mr. William was serving his sentence. Inside was a 2-page handwritten letter. It turned out Mr. William had seen James's live stream on the prison television. "James, my son, all my life, I took pride in building towers of steel and glass that blotted out the sky. But seeing you light up a tiny wooden schoolhouse using nothing but the wind, I finally realized how poor I truly was. You didn't just bring light to those children. You brought light into the darkest corners of my soul. I have used the last of my legal savings funds, completely untouched by the conglomerate, to purchase 1,000 books for the school library. Please accept this as an apology from a father who lost his way." James read the letter under the glow of the wind-powered lights, feeling a weight lift off his heart. The greatest reconciliation isn't found in words, but in the harmony of doing something good together. Years passed, and the valley was no longer a forgotten land. With electricity came the internet, allowing the villagers to share their produce with the entire world. The Seeds of Happiness bakery became a landmark of resilience. Diep and James remained unchanged. Every morning they still lit the hearth together, and the aroma of cassava cakes continued to drift across the hillsides, Ly grew into a young woman and chose to study sustainable agriculture so she could return and help her parents. As for Fat, he became the village's professor and chief engineer, the man who was always there the moment a single light bulb flickered out. On one particularly peaceful evening at sunset, James sat on the porch, rolling the old river stone in his hand, now polished to a high shine from years of touch. He watched Diep teaching Ly how to shape the dough, then looked toward the wind turbines silently spinning on the mountain peak. He understood. Now true peace isn't a life without challenges. It's knowing how to use those challenges to create value for others. The sweetness of the cake, the salt of their sweat, and the light of their faith had woven together to write a legendary tale of love and redemption in the heart of the deep green wilderness.